right now.
Good morning, WMAL News Time, 7:40. It's Andy Parks, Fred Grandy, and Brian Neiman.
Poor Al Gore. Global warming completely debunked via the very internet you invented. Oh, the irony. The iron.
Of course, that is renowned climatologist Jon Stewart, also the host of The Daily Show, actually changing his mind on global warming. What next? If this is settled science, why are these Climategate revelations so unsettling? We're going to get the definitive answer from Senator James Inhofe, the ranking Republican on the Public Works and Environment Committee, who, if I recall, Senator, talked about this 4 years ago, right?
Well, actually, it was back during Kyoto. That's almost 10 years ago.
Holy
but
cow.
As far as cooking the science, and anyone who wants to get to my website and look this up, I made a speech on the floor of the Senate 4 years ago and talked about all the scientists coming to me saying they won't let us, they won't air our views. Everything's on one side, and it's just not done properly. So I gave a talk about that, and sure enough, redemption came when the hackers arrived and opened things up.
Well, how do we follow through now? I mean, obviously you've got a little bit of daylight, but you still have your chairman, Barbara Boxer, saying that we got to shoot the messenger and not the message.
Okay, well we'll be able to do that. My major concern right now is something that happened yesterday, and that is the EPA. Lisa Jackson's the director appointed by Obama, and she's been in the process of trying to complete this thing for an endangerment finding. And it gets a little bit high weeds here, but if that happens, that is what they're going to try to do by regulation, what they cannot do because they don't have the votes to do it by legislation. And that would be to start regulating under the Clean Air Act so that Fred Grandy's sitting on the back porch barbecuing something and they can file a lawsuit because that's disturbing the polar bear in some places. You know, it can. No, I'm really serious. These guys are way, way out there. I'm not concerned about it. For quite some time before the hackers came in, we had this thing beat in the Senate. It was over. And don't you remember about a week ago I said to Barbara Boxer, it was live on TV, you know, Barbara, it's over. Global warming is dead. I won, you lost, get a life. Don't you remember that?
Yeah,
that was before the hackers came.
Yeah.
And now that made it much more difficult. But we still have our president going to Copenhagen, so that's another thing.
All right. Senator, I don't know if you read the article earlier in the week in the Wall Street Journal, but it says it all leads to the money. It's all the money trail that makes these people pursue this because of all the grants of all of the various governments around the world throwing money into this equation. Do you agree?
Oh, absolutely. And the whole idea of cap and trade, I think the logical question would be, if you really do believe that anthropogenic gases and CO2, methane cause global warming, if you really believe that, why don't you just restrict CO2, put a tax on CO2? That's what some of the purists want to do. And the reason they don't want to do that is because then people would know how much this costs. Fred, and back in Kyoto days, when Al Gore is trying to get us to ratify the Kyoto Treaty, that was when I thought they're probably right. Everybody says that anthropogenic gases cause global warming, and until the Wharton School of Economics did their Wharton Econometric Survey, they said, what would it cost us if we were to ratify that convention and live by its emission requirements? And the range was between $300 and $330 billion a year. Now, Fred, when you and I were in Congress, we remember the largest tax increase. Well, actually, that was the Clinton-Gore tax increase of 1993.
Yeah, I was there.
That was when we looked at that, and that was a $32 billion tax increase. This would be 10 times greater than that. So that's when we started looking, or I started looking at the science, only to find scientists coming to me. I'm talking about Richard Lindzen at MIT, really top people, saying that they've been completely shut out of this thing, and that's when I used the hoax statement, which was 6 years ago. But they were talking about how grants have been shut off by the EPA and by the Heinz Foundation, and there are scientists who have been intimidated into signing on to this thing, and that's when we first got suspicious. Yes, you're right. It is follow the money. In fact, Barbara had a hearing where she had the various people coming in from industry saying, we want to do our part because it's going to be, well, these were different energy companies. So we did a little analysis on each one. How much money would they make if they had a cap and trade bill like the one that passed the House of Representatives? And we're talking about not millions, but billions of dollars.
Wow.
So, and right now, my major concern now is that, I know the bill is dead and all that. We understand that. We're not going to have cap and trade.
Right.
But if they are able to successfully ignore the fact that the science has been cooked and use the Clean Air Act to start imposing regulations, they could do essentially the same thing that they could do under cap and trade, but they do it through regulation.
Okay. I want you to hold on for just a couple of minutes if you can. I want to come back and I want to ask how people can help you, all right? Don't go anywhere. Senator James Inhofe here, our guest on the Grandy and Andy Morning Show at 7:45.
Part of our looking at this will be looking at a criminal activity which could well have been coordinated.
Oh, it's got to go after the hacker. Don't go after what they found.
That's Senator Barbara Boxer, the chair of the Environment and Public Works Committee. Global warming may be a hoax, but she's still feeling the heat because of all the criticism. And we're talking to Senator James Inhofe, her Republican counterpart on that committee, who has probably more than anybody else been responsible for bringing the truth to bear. And Senator, I wanted to follow up on something that Andy talked about. How now that the big mo is swinging over to the critical side, can we help you get this message out? Because the mainstream media has not been very supportive.
CBS, ABC, they've all but avoided this story completely over the past 12 days.
Yeah, it's gotten out pretty well. Talk radio, Fox has been talking about it. But you're right, it's been suppressed, and we're used to that. We knew that in advance. Well, what you can do now, first of all, don't worry about anything passing. It's not going to pass. She, at the very most, might have 28 votes, and she'd need 60 votes, and they're obviously not going to bring it up. My concern now is what they're going to do with the regulation, and that's where people can come in and say, look, you can't do this. You're basing. She said, the director of the EPA sat there yesterday about this time and said that, yes, well, it is true that all of our science that we're basing our endangerment finding is based on the IPCC. Now, that's the United Nations. They're the ones that started this whole thing. I think the only thing right now left to do is just talk about this thing. With the healthcare thing, and with Gitmo and all these other really critical things out there, there's a lot of competition for time. Right. Keep this issue alive. They're going to try to do it with regulation. This would be a very, very expensive thing, comparable to the cost of socializing medicine.
Well, based on the kinds of emails we get when we brought this subject up a couple of days ago, because we knew we were going to talk to you, I don't think this issue is going to go away anytime soon, because a lot of people are just angry. They're just unnerved that this has gone so far and not been outed by people other than you.
Well, you got to keep in mind also, on the 9th of December, the president's going to go to Copenhagen.
Right.
He's going to make a speech. He's going to say that we in the United States are going to reduce our emissions by 17% by 2020. Well, that's what the House bill called for. And I've done a lot of radio shows over in Western Europe, and you'd be shocked. They don't know how American government works. And they can't do it. The president can't do it, but they all believe that it was a done deal because he's going to go over there and give that message.
Oh, wow.
They forgot that we have the legislative branch too, don't we, Fred?
Yeah, we used to, yeah.
All right, Senator, we want to thank you for joining us. We'll talk again. Keep us posted. Right?
Thank you, Jim.
All right,
take care.
Very good. Senator James Inhofe of Oklahoma here on the Grandy and Andy Morning Show. It is 7:50 at WMAL. And